Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Boy, and today I'm here to teach you guys every single map com that you could possibly need to know on both Sandstorm and Undergrowth. The reasons that I'm doing this on only these two maps is because these are the two most popular maps that you see played most in competitive play. You don't really see any of the other maps getting used too much, and I know all the comms on these two maps, so I am going to be able to teach them all to you guys here today. So we're going to be starting on Sandstorm here, but just real quick, I want to explain to you how map comms are used. Pretty much, you're going to be duo queuing ranked with a teammate most likely, or you could be playing pugs or scrims or something, and you'll be in a VC with lots of other team members. So pretty much, when you die, you're going to need to comm the position of the enemy that killed you to your team, or maybe even before death, you might spot one coming, and then you'll be able to call the location of the enemy to your teammates, and that pretty much just gives you an advantage over them, and it's very helpful. It helps you get better at the game, improving your comms and stuff. If you're playing just normal Krunker ranked or Krunker face it, you will only be with one other person. You might not be in a VC, but if you are in a VC, then comms are very important and can be used very well in order to just give out the location of the enemies to your teammate. So we're going to be starting off here on Sandstorm A. This is the A point. When attacking this point, there's not really any comms that you can call. It's either they're just on site or they're not on site, and if they're not on site, then one of the other comms will be used. If you're coming up ramp here, you should pretty much see one here, but it's pretty close to point, so you don't really need a comm for this. You don't really need a comm for any of these. There are quite a few just normal spots, but I don't really see people comm too much on this point when attacking. However, when defending, this is known as back, and usually there's back left and back right, and then over here this is ramp. So if you want to call one coming ramp, then you know this is ramp, and your teammate will know what you're talking about. So I think we're just going to do this part next. This is all mid. This is all known as mid through here. We're going to go to point B actually. This place doesn't really have a comm. It's not really useful for anything. There's no point in coming here to your teammates. You can just call mid if you want to call that something. Up here is scaff. This is scaffold. You're going to pretty much be calling this when playing on this site. Again, when defending, there's a few comms that you might use, but if you're attacking, you're only going to really need to call site here. You don't really need to call when attacking too much, as pretty much all the enemies are going to be on site. One could be sitting off point here. So this comm would be tree. This is an example of a place where an enemy can sit off point. This is tree. This could be called behind box or something along those lines. It's sort of coming out mid. Some people do like to rat here. So if you have a teammate on scaff, they might decide to rat there. So you can just call that box, or like corner box. This is known as double box. Sometimes people do like to jump up here and get them peek. Sometimes people do like to sit behind this stool here. I'll just recommend calling it stool. There's nothing really much more to it. Over here is a wall. So if there's a player sat here, this is wall. You can call that. Not many people sit here. This isn't really a good spot at all. I would like to see this spot utilised more though. It would be quite cool. And there's not really a name for this spot, but you can actually get up here. This is people do sometimes like to set up here. You can just call this a roof or something. And then obviously if you're defending, that's going to be scaff, and that's going to be mid all the way back there. So you can say coming from mid. I think this might actually officially be known as corner, so you can call corner here. And if you're over here, this is just a long. All of this is just long. If you're going to be rotating to the next point here, this is called under. So you call under. This is mostly used when pushing third point. So if you're sat here defending third point, up here you can call under, like two under. This is actually officially known as short. If you're holding something like here, you can see that they're coming under. So if you see one and you back off, then you can call one coming under. But they're pretty much going to pop out short here. This is known as short because obviously this is the third point. This is what you're going to be defending. And this over here is known as mid. Mid or long, usually. I would go for mid, it's a bit more safe. But if you're attacking this site, notable comms include scaffold. That's short, obviously, in case none of your team are pushing from short. You can just call this box. And there's not really any other calls on this site, I do believe. Your teammates should see anyone sitting in this corner here. Sometimes people do like to sit over here on this box. You can just shout whatever for that, just on box, in mid. Sometimes when attacking this point, because it's sort of a wall site and there's a left and a right, you may want to call how many people are on both sides. So if you run in here and die, you may comm 2 left, 2 right, and that will give your team all the information that they need to be able to attack this site. The last point is over here. This is D site. This is going to be your long. That's going to be under. People might call this if there's one coming from under, of course. It's a pretty common comm, actually. Through here is a market. This is actually what people call it. This is market. So if you're getting pushed on this site, then people will call market. From here is actually commonly known as short, I believe. There's only a few spots on this point where people can sit off. People can sit tree, which you can just call tree. This sitting up here sort of gives you a bit of an easier line of sight to long. So people might call one tree if they're off point or something. Another common spot to sit is back. This is known as back here. Sometimes people will sit here and wait for people to get on point before popping their heads out. And that is pretty much all the comms you may need to know on this map. Okay, so the next map that you may need to know comms for is of course Undergrowth. So we're going to be doing the same thing again, starting from point A and then eventually working our way around the map throughout the other points. So this is point A. If you're attacking this point, common spots to sit include behind this box and behind this box. There's not really a way to tell them apart. You can just call box if you need to call one of these, but of course it can sometimes be hard to tell apart. I don't really hear people using too many comms when there's people sitting behind these boxes. Usually you can just clear out point pretty easy without many comms, but sometimes one may be sitting off site here. This is known as hut. If there's one in here, you call hut. And of course your teammates know what you mean by that because they'll be sat in here. This is known as ramp. It can sometimes be used to call when defending on A site or on B site. Because sometimes you'll be sat on B site and there's going to be 2 ramp or maybe one's in a hut. So those are also 2 sort of overlapping comms that work for both sites. This little bit here is known as wraparound. Around here, it's sort of the intermediate between being able to see the enemy and pillar, which is this comm right here. So if there's one around this sort of area here, this will be called pillar. But if they sort of go out of this pillar area, this will be known as wraparound. Anyway, this will be known as tunnel. And up you can see mid here. You can see mid. There's not really a name for this spot. Nobody really uses it. So you can either just call pillar or mid, depending on which way they're going to. This is sort of commonly known as wall. One of the enemies may be sat up here. They may be holding an angle, and this is pretty much going to be just called wall. So you can just call wall if there's one up here. Another common rat spot is box. So if you're pushing this B site here, you may call that one's behind box, and people should know what you mean by this, because this is obviously double box. This is blue box up here. There's not really going to be one up here, so you don't need to know a comm for that. There might be one in here, but it's quite rare, so you could call pillar maybe for these. There might be one sat off site down here or something. I know I like to do this. It's quite rare as well, but you can just call tree for this. Sometimes people do also like to sit behind this box. This is also quite rare, so you shouldn't really need a comm for that. You can also just call box as well for that if you so desire. And nobody really uses these 3 boxes. This is a spot that people do like to hold when defending A. Just call this ramp because it's pretty close to ramp. People should know like what you mean by that. Maybe top ramp might work a little bit better, but that's all the comms that you should need on that site. Going on to third site. This here is known as back behind these boxes here. This is known as double box. This here is table. So sometimes there might be one behind here you can call table, or there might be one actually on the table. Up here is up. You can just call this up. And this is scaffold. So if there's one on the scaffold, maybe holding here or whatever, you can call scaffold. But if they're actually at the top of the scaffold and onto this rock peeking you from C, this here is known as up. This is obviously still pillar. There's not really going to be one in this tunnel here, so you can just call all of this pillar. And here I like to call mid because it's sort of connected to mid. This is all also mid. So if there's one pushing down here, then you can just say mid, which leads us to our 4th point here. Again, if you're defending here, this is just mid more or less. This can be known as short. Over here in this back corner, sometimes people like to lurk over here. This is known as tree. Sometimes people may be on point behind these here pillars. This is known as pillar. And if there's one over here, you can call this cubby. This is of course blue box. This is double box. And that should be all the comms that you need to know on this map. So thank you so much for watching to the very end. If you have made it this far, please feel free to drop a subscription. It would really mean the world to me. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of summer. That gives us about 3 months. I think we can do it personally. If you did enjoy the video, please feel free to drop a like. It really helps me out. And there should be some other videos popping up on your screen about now. So if you do want to check any of those out, please feel free. It really does help me out. And apart from that, yeah, that's about it. So thank you so much for watching once again. And yeah, take care. Bye.